Now we'll study some disadvantages of friction. Okay. So friction opposes the motion of a body. Okay, so it opposes the motion of a body. Suppose a ball, you throw this ball, it will roll. After some times, it will stop. Okay, it stops because of the opposite force that has been applied by the surface. Okay, so it stops moving. The other practical example would be a cycling. So when you are cycling on a sand or even on a road, after pedaling for some time, it will go to a certain distance and then it will stop. Okay, so again you have to pedal it. So why it stops? It stops because of friction. All right, so that is one of the disadvantages of friction. Friction causes wear and tear, right? So because of friction, heat is generated and it causes wear and tear. The example is your shoe, it get wear out wore out after sometimes because of friction. So you have this grips over here and it gets spoiled after sometimes because of friction. Similarly, your tires, okay, car or bikes, it gets spoiled out because of wear and tear. So these are the disadvantages of friction. The other one is it produces heat. Now because of that heat, so for example, any space station, if anything is coming, say a spacecraft is coming from a space station, when it enters the earth atmosphere, because of friction it generates a large amount of heat. So you know about Kalpana Chawla, the her aircraft, a spacecraft, in that the tiles which were able to manage the heat was malfunctioned, and because of that the entire plane got destroyed. So such aircrafts, so it produces a large amount of heat and we have to manage this heat, and which is because of friction. In so for example, we have ballistic missiles. When you fire a ballistic missiles, it travels to the outer space, okay, so that it can travel a larger distance at a very high speed. But once it comes on the earth with its warhead, in that case again, to manage that heat, we have to compose it, or we have to make that payload, we have to cover that payload with a certain kind of a special coating or a special material. In case of Agni missile, they use carbon fiber. Okay, this is a special kind of fiber which can withstand a very large amount of heat. So when anything comes because of friction, basically a ballistic missile is nothing but a missile that has been thrown from the surface of the earth. It goes in the outer space, and then once its fuel get over, it starts re-entering, okay, and it falls. It's just like a stone you throw. It will form a parabola and it will come down. Okay, so once it is coming down, in that case, once it enter the earth atmosphere, it generates a large amount of heat, and this heat is generated because of friction, and because of that we have to do a lot of things to manage it. All right, so basically that is the issue with the friction. Okay, so we have to create a special kind of a coating, a special kind of a material to handle that heat. So friction produces heat. The other practical example would be in your machines. So machines, usually engines, other things, you have to use coolants and other kind of a thing to manage this heat. So machines which are running mechanical things, in that case we have to use oil or other things to manage this heat. So these are the disadvantages of friction. Now how we can reduce this friction? So what are the different ways with which we can reduce friction? So by making the surface smooth. So one of the reasons why the friction is generated at first place is because the surface is, even whatever the smoothest surface, there is some kinds of spikes over there. When it comes in contact with the other surfaces, they get entangled, okay, and hence it generates friction. So what we can do is we can either fill this gap with oil or some solid so that it can move smoothly, okay, or we can remove this rough edges. Now this is at a microscopic level, okay, so they are very small, very tiny. So one of the method is by making the surface smooth. Now the reason, okay, so example is if you throw a ball at a very smooth surface, it will travel a larger distance as compared to if you it is a rough surface, it won't travel that much distance. Okay, so by smoothing it, we can reduce it. Now, one of the practical example would be a carom board. On a carom board, you sprinkle some powder, it becomes smooth. Okay, the surface becomes smooth and you can easily play on it. So by smoothing the surface, you reduce friction. So one of the ways to reduce friction is by smoothing the surface. The other way of reducing friction is by using lubricant. So if you use lubricant, that is oil or grease, in that case, you can reduce friction. So in machines, we use it. Practical example would be in your bicycle, you use oil to smoothen it, okay, or to reduce friction. The other way, by using ball bearings. So these are ball bearings over here, and these have been used, say, in carrying your weight or other things, say trolley or baggage. You have these wheels, and it becomes very easy for us to move these bags, even though where they are very heavy, because of this ball bearings or because of these wheels. Okay. So ball bearings, they reduce friction. The other thing is by streamlining. By streamlining the body, we can reduce friction. So one of the example of streamlining is, so what do you understand by streamlining? Say this is the water. Okay, now the fish wants to move it. The body of the fish is streamlined. That means it can cut the water. So the water can flow from here and from here. Okay, and in that case, it won't generate something called as drag. Okay, so that is how it can reduce friction. So a body of this shape, it will create a large amount of drag. If you see, it can't move, it is generating a large amount of, so there is a large amount of force that has been acting on this body. In that case, it is not easy for this kind of a shape to move in front. This is called as a non-streamlined shape. In a streamlined shape, okay, so body can, it is allowing the body to move up and down. Okay, so most of the things that we see around us which moves in high speed are streamlined or aerodynamic. Okay, so for example, the helmet of this person, this athlete, okay, it's aerodynamic or it's streamlined, in which case if the air is flowing in this direction, in that case it will move from up of it. Okay, so it is giving a direction for it to move, to cut the air easily. Another practical example would be a bullet train. The bullet train is made in such a way that the air it hits, it can go above it. Okay, so air, it can move. So air that flows can move easily through it. Okay, so this is also a streamlined shape. Aircrafts are maximum. All the aircrafts have been streamlined. Okay, this is a special aircraft. This is SR-71. Okay, it moves at 3 Mach speed. That is 3 times the speed of sound. Okay, 3 Mach speed it moves. That is a very high speed for even for fighter aircrafts. Usually, most of the aircraft they move at 2 Mach speed. So this is it has a streamlined body. So special attention has been given for the shape of it. In India, we had MiG 25 Foxbat. Okay, this aircraft was able to travel at a speed of 3 Mach. Okay. Advantages of friction. So what are the advantages of friction? Now, once you go through the advantages, you'll forget about all disadvantages. It has multiple advantages, and in fact, we have changed all the disadvantages of friction into advantages. So we can walk because of friction. So this is a very big advantage of friction. We couldn't have walked without friction. Okay, so imagine that you are walking on a floor where there is all oil. Oil has been spilled over here. You won't be able to walk. If you have been to a hilly place, a cold region where there is snow, in that case the road sometimes becomes icy. In that case, you can't walk on that road. Okay, why? Because of lack of friction. Because the friction has been reduced because of ice. So we can walk because of friction, and that is one of the greatest advantages of friction. The other advantages is we can create fire because of friction. So because of friction we can generate fire. So in ancient times, okay, our forefathers must have generated fire using this method of friction. Okay, so friction produces heat, and with heat they generated fire. All right. we can light a matchstick or write on a board or a paper because of friction. So because of friction we can write. Okay, so we can write with a chalk on a board or on a piece of paper because of friction, and certainly we can light a matchstick because of friction. Brakes in the wheels work because of friction. So of course, because of the friction between this rubber pad over here and this rim. Okay, so when you press it, in that case it comes in contact with it and it creates a friction, and because of which this wheel stops. Okay, so what are the ways of increasing the friction? So these are the advantages. So we would like to increase friction. So in that case, by making the surface rough. So if you want to increase friction, we will make the surface rough. For example, in the tires there are grooves. Okay, there are certain grips patterns have been made in your shoe or on tire. This is to increase friction. Similarly, bats that we use, so cricket bat or hockey stick, okay, on that we have grips. We put the grips over there on the top of it. Okay, this is just to have a good grip on it. Okay, good hold on it. Okay, because it makes the surface rough. Okay, by using a dry surface. Okay, so if the floor is wet, you dry it, it generates friction. Okay, it has more friction in it. If it is wet, in that case the friction is less and you can fall. Okay, in Formula 1 during the rainy time they use a special kind of tires. Okay, it has large amount of friction. Okay, so it can generate a more friction with the surface, and they can run it on the, even in the rainy season they can use this. Okay, or they can complete their laps. The only issue with this is the lap speed reduces. The speed of the vehicle it reduces because it has a greater grip on the floor, but the speed it has to compromise with the speed. All right. Okay. Way to increase friction. Okay, by increasing the weight. So the last thing is how you can increase the friction. You can by increasing the weight of that body. So if you put more weight on it, in that case the friction will increase. All right, so that's it. Thank you so much. Bye.